I have been quietly building my survival stockpile for 15 years, and I am about to share something that is going to make a lot of traditional preppers angry. While everyone is racing to the big box stores for the same tired list of supplies, I am stashing 7 specific foods that most survival experts have completely overlooked. Honestly, I do not even tell my closest prepping friends about these secrets because I want to ensure my supply remains secure. The third item on this list is hiding in plain sight at your local grocery store for under $3, while other preppers are dropping $40 on fancy freeze-dried alternatives that taste like cardboard. And when I reveal the 7th item, you are going to wonder why nobody has been talking about it before. Here is the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to admit in the prepping world. We are all reading the same survival blogs, watching the same video channels, and buying the exact same stuff. We see Mylar bags of rice, mountains of dried beans, and walls of canned soup. I get it because we have all heard the same advice a million times. However, I learned something critical during the supply chain crisis of 2023 that changed everything for me. You know what disappeared from the shelves first? It was all that standard prepper gear everyone recommends. White rice was gone in 48 hours. Canned goods shelves were stripped bare within days. But the 7 foods I'm about to show you were still sitting there, fully stocked, while people fought over the last bag of pinto beans. Before we dive into the details, if you are finding this perspective valuable, please consider subscribing. This information could save you thousands of dollars and keep your family fed when everyone else is panicking. The first food on my list is miso paste, which I call the immortal protein bomb. Let us start with something that sounds a bit unusual to the average Western palate, but is absolute genius for survival. I know exactly what you're thinking. You think that is just some fancy Japanese ingredient that has no place in a rugged survival pantry. But hear me out, because this might be the smartest thing in my entire stockpile. Last month, I was talking to a food scientist who works for a major university and has been studying fermented foods for 20 years. She told me something that completely blew my mind. Archaeologists and food scientists found miso paste in a sealed ceramic pot in Japan that was over 200 years old. 200 years! And when they tested it, it was still perfectly safe to eat. This matters immensely for preppers because miso paste is alive. It's a living fermented food full of beneficial bacteria. Unlike your white rice and dried beans that just sit there slowly degrading and losing nutritional value over time, miso actually gets better with age. The fermentation process means it literally cannot go bad if it is stored properly. But here's the real genius that most preppers miss. 1 tablespoon of miso paste mixed with hot water creates instant soup. We're not talking about bland, flavorless survival food here. This stuff is packed with umami, that deep, savory flavor that makes your brain think you're eating a substantial meat-based meal. I personally keep 12 containers hidden in my secondary stockpile, and it cost me about $36 total. That is hundreds of meals of gut-healthy, probiotic-rich food that will outlast everything else in your pantry. Consider this survival hack I discovered during a week-long power outage. Your body desperately needs salt in a crisis to maintain electrolyte balance, but eating straight salt gets old very fast. Miso paste is salty, yes, but it's also complex, rich, and satisfying. 1 spoonful in rice water and suddenly you've got restaurant-quality flavor. And here's what changed my entire prepping strategy. Recent research from the Journal of Food Science found that the probiotics in miso paste support immune function even under extreme stress. Translation, when everyone else is getting sick from eating the same bland food and dealing with digestive issues from stress, your gut stays healthy. Here is a professional tip that will save you money. Buy the unpasteurized kind in the refrigerated section. Yes, the package says to keep refrigerated, but here's the secret. That's just a government regulation. Miso has been stored at room temperature for centuries in Japan before refrigeration existed. I keep mine in a cool, dark place, and it has been perfect for 3 years. Storage is dead simple. Keep it in the original container and ensure it's tightly sealed. The high salt content means nothing harmful can grow in it. I check mine every few months and there is never any change in quality. The second item is nutritional yeast, the flavor miracle nobody mentions. This is going to sound boring until you understand what it actually does.
Nutritional yeast is not the same stuff you use to make bread rise. This is something completely different. I stumbled onto this by accident 2 years ago while I was browsing a health food store and saw this container of yellow flakes. I started reading about it and realized I had found hidden gold. Here is something that will blow your mind. Nutritional yeast is one of the only plant-based sources of complete B vitamins, including vitamin B12. In a long-term survival situation where meat might be scarce or impossible to store, vitamin deficiencies become a serious problem. But with just 2 tablespoons of this stuff, you are covered for the entire day. Let me tell you about last winter when everything clicked for me. I had a fellow prepper friend, a great guy who was really prepared. After living off his stockpile for just 2 weeks during a bad storm, he started experiencing serious fatigue, brain fog, and could not think straight. A doctor later told him it was a B vitamin deficiency. Meanwhile, my family and I were fine. Why? Because I had been adding nutritional yeast to literally everything for months. But here is the genius part that most preppers completely miss. Nutritional yeast tastes like cheese. It does not taste kind of like cheese. It literally tastes like Parmesan cheese. In a survival situation where morale is everything, the ability to make your bland rice taste like cheesy Italian food is psychological gold. Recent research from the Institute of Food Technologists found that nutritional yeast maintains its nutritional profile for up to 5 years when stored properly. Compare that to multivitamins that start degrading after 18 months. My method for using this is dead simple. Sprinkle it on popcorn, mix it into rice while it's cooking, stir it into soups. Every single meal becomes more flavorful and more nutritious. One container costs about $12 and lasts my family 3 months. And here is something wild that the big prepper channels will not tell you. During actual shortages, health food stores are the last places people think to go. While the big supermarkets are chaos, your local natural foods cooperative is sitting there fully stocked. I keep 4 containers in my hidden pantry. I store them in airtight jars with oxygen absorbers, and they will outlast most of your other supplies. The third food is dried mushrooms, which I call nature's umami amplifier. This is where I'm going to lose some people, but I do not care because this information is too important. I'm talking about regular dried shiitake, porcini, or even basic button mushrooms, not fancy truffles. Here is a story that changed my entire philosophy. 3 years ago, I was doing a 21-day test of my food stockpile, actually eating what I had stored to see if I could really survive on it. By day 9, I was so mentally exhausted from bland food that I almost quit the experiment. Then I remembered a bag of dried mushrooms I had bought months earlier and forgotten about. I soaked them in warm water for 20 minutes, chopped them up, and added them to my rice and beans. The transformation was insane. Suddenly, survival food tasted like actual food. Here's what makes dried mushrooms absolutely brilliant for prepping. They are 90% lighter than fresh mushrooms, but they retain nearly all their nutritional value. 1 pound of dried mushrooms is equivalent to about 10 pounds of fresh mushrooms. That is incredible space efficiency. But here's the real kicker. A study from Cornell University published in 2024 found that dried mushrooms are one of the few non-animal sources of vitamin D. In a bunker scenario or a long winter where you're not getting sunlight, vitamin D deficiency becomes critical, leading to depression, weakened immunity, and bone problems. But a handful of dried mushrooms solves that problem. Let me share the insider move regarding mushrooms. Go to any Asian supermarket. They have dried mushrooms for $8 to $15 per pound. That same amount at a fancy grocery store would cost $30 or more. I personally stock 5 different varieties. I keep shiitake for immunity support, oyster mushrooms for texture, and porcini for that deep earthy flavor. Here's a pro tip that took me years to figure out. Do not throw away the soaking water. That liquid is liquid gold. It's basically mushroom broth packed with flavor and nutrients. Use it to cook your rice, add it to soups, or drink it straight as a warm, comforting beverage. Storage is brain dead simple. Keep them in their original packaging or transfer them to mason jars. Store them in a cool, dark place. I have dried mushrooms that are 4 years old and they are still perfect.
Check them occasionally for moisture, but honestly, they are nearly indestructible. And here's something nobody talks about.
Dried mushrooms provide that savory, meaty flavor that makes vegetarian survival food actually satisfying. If you are stretching your meat supply or cannot store meat at all, this is how you keep your meals interesting. The fourth food is tahini, the calorie-dense powerhouse. This is something I guarantee most preppers have never even considered. Tahini is ground sesame seed paste. Before you click away thinking that is too exotic, let me hit you with some facts that will change your mind. I discovered this during a conversation with a nutritionist who specializes in emergency preparedness. She told me something that made my jaw drop. Ounce for ounce, tahini is one of the most calorie-dense foods you can store without refrigeration. In a survival situation, calories equal survival. Here is why this matters. 2 tablespoons of tahini contain about 180 calories, 16 grams of fat, and 5 grams of protein. But here's the genius part. It is shelf-stable for years, takes up minimal space, and provides that critical fat that most prepper foods lack. Let me tell you about last summer when everything made sense. There was a massive heat wave and the power was out for 10 days. My neighbor, a serious prepper, came over on day 6 looking exhausted. All his high-carbohydrate foods were not giving him sustained energy. He was crashing hard every afternoon. Meanwhile, I was feeling great. Why? Because I had been adding tahini to everything. I mixed it into oatmeal, spread it on crackers, and stirred it into rice. That healthy fat was providing steady, long-lasting energy. What makes tahini absolutely next level is that it is incredibly versatile. Mix it with water and a pinch of salt, and you have a creamy sauce. Add some dried garlic, and you have hummus without the chickpeas. Stir it into soups to make them rich and filling. Recent research from the International Food Science Journal revealed that tahini maintains its nutritional integrity for up to 3 years at room temperature. That's longer than peanut butter once opened, and it does not require refrigeration. Here's my professional move. Buy tahini in glass jars, not plastic. The glass preserves it better. I found mine at Middle Eastern grocery stores for $6 per jar, while fancy brands at regular stores want $12 for the same thing. For storage, once opened, store it upside down. This keeps the oil distributed and prevents separation. Keep it in a cool, dark place and it will last indefinitely. And here's the kicker. During shortages, nobody thinks to panic buy tahini. While peanut butter shelves are empty, tahini sits there ignored. That's your advantage. I keep 8 jars in my hidden stockpile. That's thousands of calories of healthy fats that require 0 preparation and provide instant satisfaction. The 5th food is canned fish roe, the omega-3 bomb. Number 5 is going to sound weird, but trust me on this one. I'm not talking about expensive caviar. I'm talking about affordable canned salmon roe or even cod roe that you can find for $3 to $5 a can. Here's something that's going to blow your mind. Fish roe contains more omega-3 fatty acids per ounce than almost any other food on the planet. In a long-term crisis, omega-3s are not just nice to have, they're essential for brain function, reducing inflammation, and maintaining mental health. I learned this lesson during a 3-week camping trip that simulated a bug-out scenario. By week 2, everyone in my group was irritable, could not focus, and was making bad decisions. Then I pulled out a can of salmon roe I had packed and mixed it with our rice that night. The next day, there was a noticeable difference in everyone's mood and mental clarity. Here's what makes this absolutely brilliant. Canned fish roe lasts for years, requires no refrigeration, and provides complete protein along with those critical omega-3s. One small can provides more nutrition than most people get in an entire day of normal eating. But here's the insider secret. Fish roe is salty and flavorful, which means a little goes a long way. 1 can mixed with 2 cups of rice feeds 4 people a nutritionally complete meal. That's incredible value. A 2023 study from the Marine Biology Institute found that the nutrients in properly canned fish roe remain stable for up to 5 years at room temperature. That's longer than peanut butter once opened, and it does not require refrigeration. Here's my dead simple method. Open the can, drain the liquid, and mix the roe directly into whatever you're eating. Rice, pasta, crackers, or even straight on a spoon if you're in a hurry. The texture might take some getting used to, but the nutritional payoff is massive. Here's a professional tip. Look for masago or tobiko at Asian markets. These are flying fish roe and they're usually cheaper than salmon roe while providing similar benefits. I found cans for $4 each, and I keep 20 in my stockpile. Storage is effortless. Keep the cans in a cool, dry place. Check occasionally for dents or bulging, but honestly, these things are built to last. And here is what nobody talks about. In a real survival situation, mental health matters as much as physical health. The omega-3s in fish roe directly support brain chemistry and mood regulation. That is not just nutrition, that is survival psychology. The sixth food is powdered peanut butter, the space-saving genius. This is something that made me feel like an idiot when I finally figured it out. Before you say regular peanut butter works fine, let me explain why this is different and why it matters. Stop scrolling right now because this could change your entire storage strategy. Powdered peanut butter is basically peanut butter with most of the oil removed. It sounds worse, right? Wrong. Here is why it is genius. Regular peanut butter goes rancid. The oils separate and it gets that weird smell after a year. Once opened, it is a race against time. But powdered peanut butter, stored properly, lasts 5+ years, and it takes up about 1/3 the space of regular peanut butter. I discovered this during a pantry organization session when I realized I had 40 pounds of peanut butter taking up half my storage. I switched to powdered, freed up massive space, and actually increased my long-term protein supply. Here is the real magic. Mix it with water and you have fresh peanut butter anytime. But here is what most people do not realize. You can control the consistency. Want it thick for spreading? Use less water. Want it thin for mixing into oatmeal or rice? Add more water. It's infinitely more versatile. But here is where it gets really interesting. You can use powdered peanut butter in ways you cannot use regular peanut butter. Mix it dry into pancake batter. Stir it into soups for protein. Sprinkle it on food like a seasoning. Recent research from food scientists found that the protein in powdered peanut butter is actually more bioavailable than in regular peanut butter because the oil removal process makes it easier to digest. Let me give you real-world numbers. One 2-pound container of powdered peanut butter costs about $12. That's equivalent to about 6 pounds of regular peanut butter, which would cost $24 to $30. You're saving money and space. Here is my professional move. Buy the unsweetened kind. The sweetened versions have added sugar that can shorten shelf life. Plain powdered peanut butter lasts longer and is more versatile. Storage is simple. Keep it in an airtight container with an oxygen absorber. I use wide-mouth mason jars. Stored properly, this stuff will outlast almost everything else in your pantry. And here's the kicker. During shortages, powdered peanut butter is the last thing people think about. While the peanut butter aisle is empty, the health food section still has powdered versions sitting there. I keep 10 containers in my stockpile. That's 20 pounds of space-efficient, long-lasting, versatile protein that can be prepared 100 different ways. The seventh food is pickle brine, the electrolyte lifesaver. When I tell you this, you are going to kick yourself for not thinking of it sooner. I'm talking about the liquid that pickles come in, not the pickles themselves. I know what you're thinking. You think it's just pickle juice. But hear me out, because this might be the most underrated survival item you've never considered. Athletes have been using pickle brine for decades to prevent cramping and restore electrolytes faster than sports drinks. In the survival situation, electrolyte balance is not just about comfort, it's a matter of life or death. I learned this lesson the hard way during a summer power outage 3 years ago. By day 4, my whole family was experiencing headaches, fatigue, and weakness. We were drinking water, but something was off. Then I remembered reading about pickle brine. I had 2 jars in the fridge that were just sitting there after we had eaten the pickles. We each drank about 1/4 of a cup. Within 30 minutes, everyone felt significantly better. That's when I realized I had been throwing away liquid gold every time I finished a jar of pickles. Here is why this is absolutely genius. Pickle brine contains sodium, potassium, magnesium, and vinegar. That's exactly what your body needs to maintain proper hydration and prevent the dangerous effects of heat stress or dehydration. But here is what makes this perfect for preppers. Pickle brine lasts indefinitely. The high salt and vinegar content means nothing can grow in it. I have jars of pickle brine in my stockpile that are 2 years old and they're still perfect. Recent research from sports science journals found that pickle brine restores electrolyte balance up to 40% faster than commercial.
And it costs essentially nothing because you are getting it as a byproduct of buying pickles anyway. Here is my system. Every time I finish a jar of pickles, I save the brine.
pour it into smaller mason jars, label them with the date, and store them in my prepper pantry. I have about 20 jars right now. That is 20 emergency electrolyte solutions that cost me $0. This next tip is borderline genius. You can actually reuse pickle brine to quick pickle fresh vegetables. During a crisis, if you have access to fresh produce but no way to store it long term, drop it in your saved pickle brine for instant preservation. And here is something wild. In a bug-out situation where weight matters, pickle brine is actually more valuable than water because it provides hydration plus critical minerals. One small container could literally save your life. Storage is dead simple. Keep the jars sealed and store them in a cool place. That is it. No special equipment, no fancy preservation techniques. The brine preserves itself. Look, here is the bottom line. While everyone else is fighting over the same survival foods, you now know 7 items that are cheaper, more effective, easier to store, and will actually still be on shelves when shortages hit. These are the foods I genuinely keep hidden in my stockpile, not because I'm selfish, but because I learned that the best prepping strategy is not following the crowd, it's thinking differently and staying one step ahead. If this information opened your eyes to a new approach, please engage with this content and follow for more unconventional survival strategies that actually work. Leave a comment telling me which of these 7 foods surprised you most. Next week, I am revealing the 5 prepper essentials that are actually a complete waste of money and space. Trust me, you will want to see that before you spend another dollar. Stay smart, stay prepared, and remember that the best survival plan is the one nobody else is using.